Hello everybody. I made one of these videos last year about how I'm feeling about the game, going into the next year of Destiny and all that, so I figure another rendition of this format wouldn't be the worst idea now that we're in our post-expansion lull as we wait for new things to pop up to do in the game. That being said, I feel like I could have just copy-pasted last year's video, replaced some numbers, and gotten the same point across. After I made that video last year, we went into Season 10, a definite low point in the game's history. Little did we know that Season 9 would end up, in my eyes anyway, being the best season we got during the year. Arguments could be made for Season 11, I suppose, mainly on the side of getting rewards and new weapons and stuff like that. But I thought Season 9 was definitely better than 8 and 10, at the very least. We also went into the largest gap in between raids we have ever had. I imagine 2020 was tough for Bungie, having to rotate people to a completely work-from-home setup, being truly autonomous for the first time in a very long time, if ever, and purging the game of a bunch of stuff so that they could actually develop the game again in a smoother fashion, among whatever else they needed to do. I went back and watched my video from last year, and the main argument in that video was, there's so much to do, and none of it matters. So, have we really progressed since that statement? You know, I am not really too sure about that. There's definitely not as much stuff to do, technically speaking, but, you know, I wasn't really making day trips to Mercury. So how am I feeling about Destiny as we go into 2021? Well, it feels like, at this point, we are basically right back where we were when I made this kind of video last year. Over the past year, we've gotten more Destiny. But we're at the point in this franchise's life where simply more Destiny isn't really cutting it anymore. Now, I'll give some credit where it's due. The narrative portion of the game has gotten much better. I actually care about the storyline now, which is a 180 from my feelings a while ago. And something that Bungie said was going to happen, pushing more towards people being able to customize their Guardian to be the alien slayer they want it to be, that happened. And I'd argue that it went very well. Build diversity has increased significantly. I am enjoying theory crafting new builds with the plethora of mods made available over the course of the past year. There are some tweaks I would make to certain mods, mainly a lot of buffs, but overall, good job. But otherwise, I had higher hopes for Beyond Light, especially, 2 months into the expansion being out, as I imagine most people did. Things got a bit better after the release of the raid, which is good, but that was mainly on the story side. The game did not evolve in any sort of meaningful way. Crucible hasn't gotten, at the very least, a new map or reason to get excited about it in a long time, despite the fact that, besides Stasis, I think the sandbox is in a pretty decent spot. The Strike playlist actually got worse because of the removal of strikes and because it's still the exact same experience as it was when it first came into the game. And Gambit, I'll be honest, as long as I'm getting cross-map Xenophage spammed by invaders every single time, I'm just not going to care about Gambit. A lot of the issues that I had with Destiny a year ago are still issues. Let's address some of the points that I made last year. The biggest thing for me continues to be end-game content lacking purpose. The end-game experience in Destiny continues to struggle overall, although things have gotten a little better. We had Grandmaster Nightfalls introduced, one of the hardest challenges the game has to offer, but the replayability factor on them is basically zero, especially considering that once you have the Conqueror title, you can't get it again, something that I think Bungie should really reconsider. Season 10 and 11's endgame was GM Nightfalls, which, again, is an activity not built for replayability, and Garden of Salvation. In Beyond Light, Master and Grandmaster Lost sectors were introduced, which are a more direct route to exotics and farming of exotics, which is great for solo players looking for that or looking for a combat challenge. Of course, we got a new raid, but I think you guys know my feelings on the raid right now, although I do think it'll age better than Garden of Salvation, and I do think the raid is pretty good. Right now, though, the endgame is probably too focused on building a top-tier loadout, but not really having many places to show it off. There's no reason to go that crazy with a build when I can just look at most enemies and they'll fall over. Leveling is not exciting, nor has it been for a long time. I remember arguing in a video for Bungie to make something where we could at least see some sort of a number go up based on how long we played or how much stuff we did. And technically we got it. Season ranks and I guess, our power level as well. But playing just for the sake of making a now meaningless number increase, not that exciting. I'm in no rush to level anymore, especially since I don't really care about GM Nightfalls. The age of this system is really starting to show. I'm not really sure what needs to be put in its place or what needs to be tuned, but getting to max level for the sake of getting to max level to try to get a title that I've already achieved in something like Conqueror doesn't really inspire me to hop on to do pinnacles. Not to mention the fact that it can feel really bad to not get what you need after churning out a bunch of pinnacle reward sites. Seasonal content itself has also regressed. Season 8 and 9 at least had actual activities that you would queue into. At least they were their own thing. Season 10 and 11 switched to public events as their core seasonal activity. But again, I guess at least they were their own thing. More than half of Season 12's core loop involves running strikes. When you do finally get to the actual new part, it's not really that engaging. Wrath bosses die more or less immediately without much of a challenge. Killing some bosses in 10 seconds for yet another 56 stat rolled chess piece or yet another random rolled weapon isn't really what's going to keep me engaged anymore. Now, I would argue that people would eventually tire of the same but different but still same menagerie spin-offs, but perhaps it's been long enough that bringing that back for a season would be welcomed. I know people do really enjoy 6-player match-made activities. Things just still don't really feel like they matter. I'm grinding levels for what purpose exactly? To be able to grind master content? For what reason? More materials, so that I can masterwork more armor to use in what content? I'm done with Conqueror. I don't need to care about GM Nightfalls anymore, and if I wasn't going for Conqueror, then I definitely wouldn't bother with GM Nightfalls, as their time to reward ratio is just not very good. The raid doesn't really require anything in the pinnacle range. This whole system just generates apathy in me. I don't really care anymore about grinding new guns because they're not that different in the grand scheme of the game. Maybe there's 1 or 2 things per season that can get a different perk on them, but you can get those pretty quickly. I don't really want to play just for the sake of replacing armor that is going to expire with an identical piece of armor. When I don't care about the loot, nor the methods in which I earn it, what is there to do? I don't really have a place to go in the game to truly test out my power, my builds, my anything really, mostly my patience. I'm as powerful as I'm ever going to get in the game, and every season is just me getting back up to that point. Again, to do what exactly? Where are my goals? I build up all of this crazy armor, the stat rolls and mod selections, and I stomp everything into the ground, or in the case of GM Nightfall, run with the same defensive perks that I always have, because trying to actually use any sort of an offensive build, most of the time, not the best idea. Destiny is a casual experience. I get it. But man, I need something to sink into. Are casual players just happy with an endless leveling staircase? I think I would be if it felt like the progression mattered, but it just doesn't feel like it does. In terms of seasonal content going into the next year, I expect things to stay mainly within the range of stuff we had in seasons 8 through 11 when it comes to the gameplay experience. I have not been given a reason to believe anything else otherwise. On the narrative side of things, I actually have very high hopes, and I'm pretty excited to see where the story ends up going now that Bungie has placed a stronger emphasis on this part of the game. I actually want to know what's going on from season to season. I think peak Destiny this year will end up being Season 14, assuming that VOG drops in Season 14. Transmog is coming in 14. I think VOG is probably going to end up in Season 14 as well, since they didn't say it was dropping in Season 13, although I could see it dropping in Season 15 since they gave a time frame for Transmog, but they didn't give a time frame for VOG. But I also don't think that they would wait until Season 15 since that's so close to the end of the Destiny content year. Not that I think VOG would be thrown back into the Destiny content vault that quickly, but hopefully you get what I mean by that. Like 6 months is a good chunk of time for VOG to be in the limelight. I don't think we see Venus return to the game as a result of VOG returning though. I think Bungie would want the planets to serve more than one purpose, and just existing isn't really the best purpose. More Destiny is not going to be enough for this franchise anymore. That is all we've gotten over the past year in the grand scheme of the game, the core of the game, just more Destiny, including Beyond Light. Beyond Light was more Destiny. We need Destiny to innovate. We need it to evolve into something better. We need it to start reaching the heights we've believed that it could all of these years. It feels like Bungie's just been barely hanging on the past year or so, just barely able to put out the stuff that they have been able to put out. And while that sucks, and I sympathize with Bungie's plight over the past year, it's probably been pretty tough, this ain't a charity, and the content that's put out still needs to deliver. I've accepted the fact that we're not going to be getting any more Forsaken-sized content drops. Bungie has said it, and if you're still holding out for it, I would just stop. Now, like right now. However, something I do take solace in a little bit is that Bungie has come out and addressed some problems, although those problems are mainly with regards to quantity of loot available. Hot take. I don't really feel like it matters how many guns you put into the game if the methods in which we obtain them are still stale. New raid perks coming on new guns from the new raid, that's exciting. I'm in. D1 guns being dropped into content that I stopped playing because I have no reason to play it anymore? There are multiple reasons why I stopped caring about getting new guns. I have a vault full of stuff that I'll never touch, and I don't care about running the Strike playlist anymore. The Season 12 loop didn't grab me at all. I get more excited about unlocking new cosmetics from the Season Pass than I do actual loot now. Ultimately, I don't think this year of Destiny is going to be worse than what we got last year. I don't. But I also don't really know how much better it's going to get, with me feeling like Bungie is just barely able to keep up. It feels like all they're able to do is just make more Destiny in order to keep up with seasonal schedules and drops. Things like leveling, Strike playlist, endgame, they're all really starting to show their weaknesses. It is fatiguing me. It is fatiguing my friends, my peers, my coworkers. And that's not even mentioning PvP, which has felt almost entirely neglected outside of sandbox stuff. Even my wife, who only played Crucible for months, has stopped engaging with it. Again, I'm a very goal-oriented player, but without evolution, without innovation, my goals don't shift, and they're lucky to even exist in the first place. It's just get to max level, make sure my armor is good for a couple of seasons, and that's really about it. I have nothing else to care about because there's nothing else to care about. I have nothing to sink my teeth into. I've been more engaged with story stuff than I have anything else. And part of me wonders what a Destiny would look like that was just a story experience nowadays. The thing is, though, I feel like this is kind of what Bungie wants. I'm making an assumption here, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But I feel like the vibe is Bungie wants you to come play the game when there's new stuff to do, and then come back later when there's more new stuff to do. Which makes sense. They don't want to make players feel like they need to devote their entire gaming lives to just one game, and that's commendable. My counter, I guess, to this would be that people will fade away from the game on a more permanent basis because they know what they're coming back to is kind of hollow. When things don't matter, the reason to come back gets weaker and weaker. I'm not saying the game needs to be dominated by activities for people who want to make this their one and only game, but keeping those players is important. Although, you know, what do I know? Every time there's a new release, people come flocking back anyway, self-included. Perhaps Bungie doesn't even need to do more because people keep showing up anyway. I haven't even spoken about weapons sunsetting either in this video. I personally am still supportive because at least it gives me some semblance of a reason to care about getting something. But at this point, I'm turning indifferent because I just don't care about guns anymore. More Destiny is not going to cut it anymore. This game needs a breath of fresh air. It needs a shakeup. It needs innovation. A new destination, a new strike. Those are not innovations. Europa's great. It's not innovation. That should be the goal over this next year and the year after. Major expansions can't just be more Destiny. That is what Seasons should be for at the least. Major expansions need to innovate and push us forward, not just add to the pile. That is how I'm feeling about Destiny going into 2021. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.